The Atlantic night, 60 miles south of Iceland, is not merely dark. It is a physical substance, a rolling, ink-black void that swallows the horizon and presses against the steel plates of His Majesty's destroyer, HMS Veteran. The date is September 11th, 1941. The war is 25 months old. Out here, the war is measured in the screaming pitch of the wind, the constant corkscrewing motion of a 1,350-ton hull through 10-foot swells, and the penetrating cold that finds its way through every layer of oilskin and wool. Aboard the Veteran, a V-class destroyer commissioned in the last war, but holding the line in this one, the crew is at action stations. They have been for hours. Their eyes, adjusted to the gloom on the bridge and in the open air of the deck, are fixed not on the water, which is invisible, but on the glowing green discs of the ASDIC repeater and the radar scope. The ASDIC operator, hunched over his set in a small compartment below the bridge, wears headphones that seal him off from the world. His universe is one of sound, the metallic ping sent out from the dome beneath the keel and the returning echo. For days, they have shepherded convoy SC-42, a slow, vital snake of 65 merchant ships laden with the materiel of survival from Sydney, Nova Scotia to Liverpool. The convoy is a known target. The wolf packs of Admiral Donitz's U-boat force are drawn to such prey. The Veteran and her escorts are the shepherds, knowing the wolves are circling just beyond the reach of their lamplight. The operator stiffens. A return, sharp, hard, not the diffuse echo of a thermal layer or a whale. It has the clarity of metal. Contact! His voice crackles over the ship's telephone line to the bridge. Green 130, range 1,200 yards, submarine contact. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander William DeChair, the Veteran's commanding officer, does not hesitate. The coordinates are relayed. The helm heels over as the helm goes hard to starboard, her boilers driving her forward. The pattern is a brutal, rehearsed dance. Depth charges are rolled off the stern rails, others launched from the Y-gun on the quarterdeck. The charges, drums of Amitol high explosives set to detonate at predetermined depths, tumble into the black water. The crew waits, seconds stretching. Then, the sea astern erupts. Columns of white water, luminous in the darkness, punch upward with a concussive thump, whoom, that shudders through the entire ship. The water subsides into a churning boil. They listen. They wait. The ASDIC pings. Nothing but the fading disturbance of their own attack. A possible kill or a cautious dive to deeper, quieter water. They cannot know. The convoy, a sprawling city of blacked-out silhouettes, plods on into the night. The Veteran resumes her station, a greyhound tense and circling. The hunt does not end. It pauses. For the next 24 hours, SC-42 moves east, a creeping mosaic of anxiety. Contacts flare and fade on the periphery. Ships are torpedoed. The night is broken by the distant orange flower of an explosion, the frantic SOS on the wireless. The escorts dash, drop charges, rescue men from oil-slicked water. It is a battle of attrition against an enemy that is mostly phantom. Then, just after 2,300 hours on September 12th, the Veteran gains firm contact again. This time, it holds. The ASDIC returns are consistent, plotting a submerged target moving slowly, perhaps a U-boat lurking beneath the convoy lanes, waiting for a shot. DeChair closes in. The destroyer is a predator now, every man at his post. The thrum of the engines is a constant vibration in the deck plates. They run in, steady. The depth charge crews, men like leading seaman John Hargreaves, work with a methodical, deafening rhythm. The charges are primed, the settings checked. There is no shouting, only the bark of orders and the clang of heavy steel. They are tired, faces lined with salt and strain, but their movements are automatic, honed by countless drills and the real, urgent need of the moment.
Stand by patterns, the order echoes. The Veteran passes over the plotted position. Fire!
The charges roll and arc, the ship surges forward, eager to clear the blast area. Again, the sea convulses. The detonations are deeper, more violent. Something is down there. The ASDIC operator reports a breaking up noise, the sound of compressed air tanks rupturing, of bulkheads collapsing. A cheer starts on the bridge, but is cut short. The contact is gone, but so is the echo. In the silence that follows the froth, a new sound emerges, not through the headphones, but through the air, a low, desperate hissing, like a giant serpent expelling air, and then, breaking the surface 50 yards off the port beam, a shape. It is the conning tower of a U-boat, water streaming from its sides, the white German snorkel ball emblem just visible in the faint light. It is U-617, a Type 7C submarine commanded by Kapitan Lieutenant Albrecht Brandy. The depth charges have not destroyed her outright, but they have wounded her grievously, forcing her to the surface. She is blown, her batteries damaged, her diving capabilities compromised. She is now a steel whale, stranded in the open. Gun crews, target bearing Red 90, open fire. The veterans' 4.7-inch guns, fore and aft, swing with a hydraulic whine. The Oerlikon 20mm cannons and the Lewis guns on the bridge wings chatter to life, tracing lines of red tracer that rip into the U-boat's casing and conning tower. The German crew, spilling out onto their own deck, returns fire with their 20mm flak gun and machine pistols. The night is torn apart by the blinding flash of cannon fire, the crack of high-velocity rounds, and the sharper, faster rattle of automatic weapons. It is a close-range naval engagement, a throwback to the age of sail, played out at point-blank range in the North Atlantic. Dechair does not break off to maneuver. He turns the veteran's bow directly toward the stricken U-boat. The intention is ram, to hold the submarine and send her to the bottom. The destroyer's engines pound, her bow wave rising as she gathers speed, 1,000 tons of vengeance aimed at the enemy's flank. But U-617 is not dead yet. On the submarine's bridge, Brandy, wounded but defiant, barks an order. With a surge of foam, the U-boat's diesel engines roar to life. She begins to move, not to flee, but to turn, a last desperate gambit. She presents her narrow stern to the onrushing destroyer, minimizing the target. The veteran's bow, aimed for a broadside impact, now slews toward the U-boat's aft section. The distance closes, 100 feet, 50, 20. The veteran strikes, but it is not a clean, splitting impact. The destroyer's bow, riding a swell, comes down atop the U-boat's aft deck, just forward of the rudder. There is a deafening, grinding shriek of metal on metal. The entire length of the veteran lurches, staggers, and then, as the swell passes, she is left perched. Her foresection, from the bows to just behind the first funnel, is now resting directly on the hull of U-617. The two warships are locked in a macabre, intimate embrace. The destroyer is literally sitting on the submarine. Shock is absolute. Aboard the veteran, the world has ceased its normal motion. The deck is canted at a strange, sickening angle. The familiar rhythmic pitch and roll of the sea has been replaced by a solid, unyielding vibration, the frantic thrum of the U-boat's diesels directly beneath their feet. The two vessels are entangled in a catastrophic stalemate. The destroyer's weight, concentrated on the submarine's afterdeck, has U-617 pinned, but not critically holed. The submarine, in turn, is acting as an unstable, moving reef. On the veteran's bridge, the air is thick with the smell of cordite and strained metal. Lieutenant Commander Dechair barks orders to the engine room. Full astern. The telegraph clangs. The destroyer's screws churn the water violently astern, but the ship groans and protests, held fast. The torque from her own propellers only serves to grind her hull deeper into the U-boat's plating. It is a deadlock. They cannot ram, they cannot disengage. They are trapped atop their enemy. Below decks, the reality is more visceral. In the forward mess decks and storage lockers, men are thrown against bulkheads by the impact. The lights flicker. From the void spaces below the waterline comes a sound no sailor ever wants to hear. The terrible high-pressure shriek of seawater forcing its way through tortured steel. The veteran has sustained damage. Her bow plates have been gashed open by the collision. The sea is entering. The damage control party, led by a seasoned chief petty officer, scrambles forward, their way illuminated by emergency battle lanterns. The passageways are already ankle-deep in icy Atlantic water. They wrestle with shoring timbers and collision mats, their breath fogging in the cold air, their shouts echoing in the confined space. The ship's survival is now a race against the inflow. Every minute they remain locked with the U-boat is a minute the sea claims more of her buoyancy. On deck, the close-quarters battle has not stopped. It is transformed. The main guns are useless, their barrels depressed too low to target the submarine directly beneath them, but the small arms fire is incessant. From the veterans' forecastle and bridge wings, Royal Navy sailors are firing down almost vertically at the U-boat's deck. They can see the German crew clearly, some manning their own gun, others trying to scramble forward, others wounded and clinging to the wet steel. Aboard U-617, the situation is one of pure desperation. Capitan Lieutenant Brandy, bleeding from a shrapnel wound to his shoulder, knows his boat cannot dive. The crushing weight of the destroyer has likely damaged the aft diving planes and hydroplanes. His only hope is to break free and attempt to escape on the surface. He shouts for maximum revolutions. The diesel engineers below, deafened by the noise and working in compartments beginning to fill with acrid smoke from electrical fires, push the engines to their limit. The submarine shudders, trying to drag its unwanted passenger with it. The shock is absolute. Aboard the Veteran, the world has ceased its normal motion. The deck is canted at a strange, sickening angle. The familiar rhythmic pitch and roll of the sea has been replaced by a solid, unyielding vibration, the frantic thrum of the U-boat's diesels directly beneath their feet. The two vessels are entangled in a catastrophic stalemate. The destroyer's weight, concentrated on the submarine's afterdeck, has U-617 pinned, but not critically holed. The submarine, in turn, is acting as an unstable, moving reef. On the Veteran's bridge, the air is thick with the smell of cordite and strained metal. Lieutenant Commander DeChair barks orders to the engine room. Full astern. The telegraph clangs. The destroyer's screws churn the water violently astern, but the ship groans and protests, held fast. The torque from her own propellers only serves to grind her hull deeper into the U-boat's plating. It is a deadlock. They cannot ram, they cannot disengage. They are trapped atop their enemy. Below decks, the reality is more visceral. In the forward mess decks and storage lockers, men are thrown against bulkheads by the impact. The lights flicker. From the void spaces below the waterline comes a sound no sailor ever wants to hear. The terrible high-pressure shriek of seawater forcing its way through tortured steel. The Veteran has sustained damage. Her bow plates have been gashed open by the collision. The sea is entering. The damage control party, led by a seasoned chief petty officer, scrambles forward, their way illuminated by emergency battle lanterns. The passageways are already ankle-deep in icy Atlantic water. They wrestle with shoring timbers and collision mats, their breath fogging in the cold air, their shouts echoing in the confined space. The ship's survival is now a race against the inflow. Every minute they remain locked with the U-boat is a minute the sea claims more of her buoyancy. On deck, the close-quarters battle has not stopped. It is transformed. The main guns are useless, their barrels depressed too low to target the submarine directly beneath them, but the small arms fire is incessant. From the Veterans' forecastle and bridge wings, Royal Navy sailors are firing down almost vertically at the U-boat's deck. They can see the German crew clearly, some manning their own gun, others trying to scramble forward, others wounded and clinging to the wet steel. Aboard U-617, the situation is one of pure desperation. Capitan Lieutenant Brandy, bleeding from a shrapnel wound to his shoulder, knows his boat cannot dive. The crushing weight of the destroyer has likely damaged the aft diving planes and hydroplanes. His only hope is to break free and attempt to escape on the surface. He shouts for maximum revolutions. The diesel engineers below, deafened by the noise and working in compartments beginning to fill with acrid smoke from electrical fires, push the engines to their limit.
The submarine shudders, trying to drag its unwanted passenger with it.
The two crews are now so close they can hear each other's voices through the din. Shouts of command, cries of pain, the distinct languages of two enemies fused in a single, sinking fate. A British seaman hurls a Mills grenade from the forecastle. It bounces once on the U-boat's casing before exploding near the base of the conning tower. A German sailor, armed with an MP-40 submachine gun, sprays a burst upward, the rounds pinging off the veteran's guardrails and superstructure. It is medieval. It is primal. It is a fight for survival measured in feet and inches. For nearly 20 minutes, the horrific union persists. The veteran, listing slightly forward into port, continues to take on water. The U-boat, its stern compressed under the weight, begins to settle lower at the aft. Both commanders face the same calculus. The longer they remain joined, the greater the chance both vessels will founder. Deschères makes a decision. He orders a complete stop on the engines, then a series of short, violent bursts ahead. The goal is no longer to pull free, but to rock the ship, to use the veteran's own mass as a battering ram to finish the submarine. The destroyer's screws bite, then stop. The hull grinds forward an inch, then back. The sound is apocalyptic, a deep, metallic tearing. With a final, shattering convulsion, the two hulls separate. The veteran lurches backwards into open water, her bow rising with a grotesque groan of released pressure. The gap reveals the scarred and mangled stern of U-617, now clearly low in the water. But the U-boat is not finished. As the destroyer stumbles astern, her guns momentarily unable to bear, Brandy seizes his chance. With a final roar from its diesels, U-617 turns hard to starboard and begins to limp away into the concealing darkness, smoke pouring from her damaged exhaust. The surface engagement, for the moment, is over. Aboard the veteran, there is no time for relief. The sea is rushing into her forward compartments with renewed vigor now that the pressure of the U-boat's hull has been removed. The damage control party reports the flooding is gaining. The destroyer is wounded, perhaps mortally. Deschères must now fight to save his ship. He orders a reduction in speed, turning her bow into the swell to minimize stress on the breached plates. Pumps are activated, their rhythmic thumping joining the symphony of distress within the hull. Every available man not at a gun or on the bridge is deployed in a bucket brigade, bailing out auxiliary spaces. The ship is in a race for her life, her fighting capability secondary to simple buoyancy. Meanwhile, the hunt continues. Other escorts, alerted by the gunfire and the veterans' reports, have closed in. The Canadian corvette HMS Morden and the British destroyer HMS Newmarket pick up the fleeing U-617 on radar. The crippled submarine, making perhaps 8 knots and trailing an oil slick, is a clear target. They pursue, opening fire with their main armament. Star shells ignite overhead, bathing the scene in a hellish, flickering white light. The U-boat's flak crew returns fire, a last, defiant gesture. Back on the veteran, watching the distant flashes of the renewed engagement, Deschères and his crew can only listen to the reports on the wireless and tend to their own wounded ship. They have done their part. They have forced the U-boat to the surface and crippled it. The coup de grace will be delivered by others. After a running battle lasting another half hour under concentrated fire from the two escorts, U-617's fate is sealed. A 4-inch shell from Morden strikes her conning tower. Others tear into her pressure hull near the waterline. The submarine slows, then stops. Her hatches fly open. Men begin to spill onto the deck, abandoning ship. The order to scuttle is given. Below, engineers open the seacocks and set explosive charges. The U-boat, her buoyancy lost, slips beneath the waves at position 57 degrees 50 minutes north, 19 degrees 20 minutes west. 41 of her crew, including Kapitan Lieutenant Albrecht Brandy, survive to be pulled from the freezing water and become prisoners of war. They are hauled aboard the very escorts that sank them, the battle ending not with annihilation, but with a brutal, professional rescue. As dawn breaks on September 13th, HMS Veteran is still afloat. Her damage control parties have won their private battle. The flooding is contained. She is down by the head, her graceful lines marred by a cavernous, crumpled wound forward of the anchor chain, but her engines are sound. She turns,
slowly, and begins the long, limping journey to join the convoy. Her role as hunter, now reduced to that of a wounded survivor. The sea around her is empty, save for the spreading stains of oil and debris, the only gravesite for those of U-617 who did not make it out.
The pale northern dawn of September 13, 1941, revealed the cost. HMS Veteran moved at a reduced speed, her bow low in the water, a visible depression running along her port side forward plating where the submarine's hull had bitten and scraped. The deck was a landscape of spent brass cartridge cases, tangled signal halyards, and the dark, drying stains that were not part of the ship's original paint. The crew moved with the deliberate slowness of exhaustion. They had been at action stations for over 36 hours. Now, in the gray light, they secured guns, tended to minor wounds, and surveyed the damage. The adrenaline of the night had drained away, leaving behind the dull ache of fatigue and the sobering sight of their wounded ship. There was no ceremony for the victory. The battle's narrative was already being typed into signal logs and encrypted for transmission. Convoy SC-42, though battered, with multiple ships lost to the Wolfpack's other members, plodded onward. The Veteran, no longer fit for the outer screen, was ordered to detach. She turned southeast, setting a course for the Clyde in Scotland, a journey of several hundred miles that would now take days instead of hours. Every hour was a test of her temporary patches and the stamina of her pumps. The crew remained at defense watches, the threat of a lone U-boat or long-range Focke-Wulf aircraft ever present. But the immediate, visceral fight was over. Below, in the sick bay, the surgeon lieutenant worked by the light of a swaying lamp. There were burns from gun breaches, shrapnel wounds from German fire, and injuries sustained in the violent lurch of the collision. In the wireless office, operators sent and received clipped messages, maintaining the tenuous link to command. In the galley, despite everything, cooks boiled huge urns of strong, sweet tea, the Royal Navy's universal solvent for shock and strain. The ship, though battered, was a living organism, and its routines began, haltingly, to reassert themselves. For Lieutenant Commander Descher, the immediate concerns were navigational and structural. Charts were consulted, tide tables reviewed. They needed to avoid heavy seas that could stress the compromised bow. Soundings were taken more frequently. The ship was silent in a new way. The normal sounds of a destroyer at speed were muted, replaced by the anxious listening for any change in the rhythm of the pumps, any new groan from the forward bulkheads. They were a wounded animal returning to its den, acutely aware of its vulnerability. 6 days later, on September 19th, Veteran crept into the Firth of Clyde. Tugs met her and guided her to a berth at the naval dockyard at Greenock. As lines were thrown to the quay, the final tension began to bleed from the ship. The ordeal of the crossing was over. Dockyard workers peering at the destroyer's twisted bow whistled low notes of appraisal. The damage was severe. An Admiralty inspection would later categorize it as requiring extensive refit. The Veteran would be out of the war for months. The crew, granted leave, disembarked on the solid ground that seemed to tilt and sway beneath their feet. Their part in the story of Convoy SC-42 was complete. They had held the line. They had forced a U-boat to the surface in a brutal, close-range duel, and they had survived the consequences of that success when their ship became entangled with their foe. Theirs was not the clean, distant destruction of a target on a horizon. It was a brutal, intimate fight that left physical scars on their ship and on themselves. Captain Lieutenant Albrecht Brandy and the survivors of U-617, a different journey was underway. Processed through the Allied prisoner of war system, they became entries in ledgers, sources of intelligence, and men waiting out the war. Brandy, a capable and aggressive commander, had fought his boat to the last possible moment. His war was over. U-617 was gone, one of the 22 U-boats lost in the increasingly dangerous Atlantic in the latter half of 1941, a period that marked the beginning of a brutal shift in the technological and tactical balance of the Battle of the Atlantic. The engagement between HMS Veteran and U-617 on the night of September 12-13, 1941, stands as a stark, almost archaic anomaly in the history of the Battle of the Atlantic. It was not a battle of radar-guided destroyers or coordinated air cover, nor was it the slow, invisible hunt of Aztec and deep-depth charges. It was a collision, both literal and figurative, of two forms of naval warfare, the surface raider and the submerged predator, forced into a proximity so close it defied doctrine. The event highlighted the brutal reality of convoy escorts in the mid-war period. They were often older, smaller ships like the Veteran, pushed to their limits against a skilled and ruthless enemy. Their weaponry was sometimes inadequate. Their victories were frequently messy, uncertain, and bought at a high immediate cost. The decision to ram, a tactic born of desperation and instinct, underscored the sheer pressure of these escort commanders, who knew that letting a U-boat escape back into the shadows could mean the loss of thousands of tons of vital cargo and hundreds of merchant seamen's lives within hours. Historically, the sinking of U-617 was one brick in the defensive wall being built that grim autumn. It contributed to the growing attrition rate of U-boats that, combined with Allied advances in code-breaking, radar, and escort group tactics, would eventually turn the tide in the Atlantic by mid-1943. But its true significance lies in its raw human and mechanical drama. HMS Veteran was repaired. She returned to service, surviving the war, to be scrapped in 1949. Her name and the specific details of that night faded from common memory, absorbed into the vast statistical narrative of the Atlantic campaign. Albrecht Brandy survived his captivity. The men of both crews returned to civilian lives, carrying with them the memory of a night when two machines of war became locked in a mortal embrace, and the fight descended into something personal, direct, and profoundly elemental. It serves as a reminder that behind the grand strategies and the tonnage statistics, the Battle of the Atlantic was fought by men on decks awash with seawater and oil, in control rooms smelling of sweat and diesel, staring into darkness and making split-second decisions that meant life or death for their comrades and their ships. It was a battle won not by a single decisive blow, but by countless such acts of endurance, skill, and desperate courage in the freezing darkness 3,000 miles from home.